Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming and joining us. We're very much looking forward to, can you hear me okay in the back? I just want to make sure. You good? Okay, thank you. We're looking forward to giving you a very, hopefully brief but very action or fact-filled report. And before we start, the first thing we'd like to do is if you'd please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. This way. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So thanks again for joining us. This is our third annual open house, and there have been many new initiatives, many successes, and lots of progress to report to you. We're going to have Supervisor Duffy talk to us about business development strategy and successes. We're going to have Supervisor Ekman talk about priority properties that we've been working on and some targeted properties where we are encouraging reuse. And also she'll talk to us about open space. Dr. Sorgini will talk about transportation and pedestrian improvements. Supervisor Knights is scheduled to update us on preliminary planning to update township buildings. He was a last-minute scratch, and I will be taking care of that in his place. So there's a lot to cover. We're not going to take questions just to make sure we get through it and give all of you a chance to hear it all without taking too long. But all of the supervisors and, of course, all of the exhibitors out there will be around after the presentation to answer any questions about this or anything else that you might have interest in. So let me give you the next slide, which is the exhibitors. This is a long list. I'm not going to read them all, but if you've been out in the hallway, this is a large number of people that have joined us in order to make themselves available to answer questions or provide information to you about them. Some of them are new businesses. Some of them are vendors to the township. But they're all people that can help you understand things about how we're doing it if there are things that you're not clear on or questions you have. Next slide, Bill. We also have the John James Audubon Center at Mill Grove. They have a wonderful new museum that opened recently that I would encourage all of you to go over and take a look at. And of course, Valerio Ballbirds Brewing is there as well. So there's a large number of people and businesses that are here interested in telling you about what they're doing, and we're very grateful to all of them for coming and joining us to make themselves available to you. Next slide, Bill. So I'm next going to introduce Supervisor Patrick Duffy, who's going to talk to us about business development, strategy, and accomplishments. Patrick?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for spending your evening out here with us. As Peter said, we've been doing these open houses now for 3 years, and we think they're very valuable so the residents can hear what is actually going on in the township from the township officials and the township manager. So you get to see firsthand what's happening. And going back a long ways, Lower Providence had this reputation that we were closed for business. In fact, there was an editorial on the May 9th, 2012 Times Herald written by a person wanting to bring a business into the old Norristown Ford site. And he wrote about the problems and the obstacles that he encountered in bringing a new business to the Norristown Ford site. And he wrote the Times Herald, and he basically titled it, Lower Providence Closed for Business. When I joined the board in 2014 and I joined Jason and Colleen, we knew that we couldn't continue to operate that way. We had to open up the businesses, open up the township to businesses if we were going to have a thriving community, one that incorporated the residents and their needs for services and providing the services that the township was going to have to provide into the future. So we looked at what we needed to do, and it was clear that we needed to target numerous properties along Ridge Pike that were closed, had been closed for a long time, whether that was the Norristown Ford property or the Collegeville Inn property or 2 vacant Gennardi buildings or 2 vacant Wawas or 3 vacant gas stations, all on corner properties, all occupying significant square footage here in the township, and all visible sign, both obviously and subconsciously, that Lower Providence was not doing the best that it could. So we undertook a profound, next slide please, we undertook a deliberate strategy and how to address those problems that we were facing. One of the things we did was we formed an active business development committee. On that business development committee is Bill Roth, our township manager, Mike Mrzinski, who is our community development person, as well as 2 supervisors sit. I've served on it, Colleen has served on it, Peter has served on it, and Jill Zimmerman has served on it. And we went out and we said, what do we need to do? One of the things we did is we brought in expertise. We brought in a business consultant to help us make connections with developers, to make connections with real estate agents, to make connections with the folks at the county who could offer businesses incentives to move into the township, so that they would have all the information that they needed. We needed to reverse that reputation that we were closed for business. And we knew that if we used this strategy of promoting the township's assets, its location, its proximity to both Valley Forge National Historical Park and Evansburg Park, its proximity to Valley Forge, its proximity to the Turnpike, its proximity to easily get to Philadelphia if you need to, that things would come around. We planted those seeds. We knew that they would provide new resources for the residents, an increased tax base, and we would add new jobs. So we went about marketing the township, and we planted those seeds and we cultivated them. Next slide, please. We also worked with the county because we knew that there would be obstacles along the way that we had to plan for now. And our planning commission, with the county planning commission, looked at Ridge Pike West overall as a block, and they came up with the Ridge Pike zoning district. It was a way to plan for future uses and future connectivities. And Jason's going to talk to you about the traffic studies and the improvements that they're planning for that corridor right now. But those seeds that we planted on West Ridge Pike have paid dividends so far. You're seeing those seeds grow. You've seen Providence Place move into the old Collegeville Inn, which was shut down for the better part of a dozen years. There's now 150 new jobs there at Providence Place. You've seen Ava's Ice Cream move into that district. You've seen the Courts at Brynwood plan for their townhouse development. You've seen Classic Coachworks invest in their building and provide renovations. You've seen the enclaves at Evansburg on Evansburg Road building village housing, so people that want to be able to walk and downsize or start a family have that option here in the township. Next slide, please. We also focused on specific areas, and we hosted open houses for the businesses in those areas. We hosted an open house at Tosco's this past spring. Last year, we hosted an open house for the businesses at Baldsburg and Park Point. The year before, we hosted one at the IBEW on West Ridge Pike. And we talked with the businesses, and we said, hey, how can we help you? How can we make your business more successful? How can we help you plan for the future? Because I've said all along, it's a lot easier to work with the businesses that you already have here in the township and help them be successful than it is to go out and hope to attract a new business that you quite frankly don't have control over the price of a property, and whether or not the property as it is a fit, and whether or not that business can afford land development to fit in here. So we had to make sure that the businesses that were here in the township were thriving, and they are. They're expanding. And you're seeing major new businesses. Next slide, please. Like I said, you're seeing Providence Place at the old Collegeville Inn, 150 jobs. You're seeing Evansburg Winery. They have a table outside, and I'm looking forward to tasting their wine in 2020 when they finally open. In the Ridge Pike East, you have the Lidl. That's 70 new jobs right now at the Lidl. In Central Ridge Pike, you have the Ollies at the old Eagleville Gennardi's. In Audubon, you've seen the dividends pay off too. The Redner's Fresh Market is opening on October 23rd, taking up significant square footage in a redone, revitalized, newly energized Audubon Village shopping center. Westover companies came in and they spent millions of dollars making that shopping center more attractive. And I think they've done a great job. You've seen Ebrew put in tremendous amounts of money in the old Cumberland Farm building, cleaning up that corner. We still have 2 more properties we're working on, and Colleen's going to update you on those, and we're working on Audubon. In Park Point, you've seen Bald Bird's Brewery. Much needed business here in the township. We didn't have anything like that, and it's a great place for people that want to go and relax with their friends and their family or their coworkers after work. They can work there. CertaPro Painters moved their corporate headquarters into the township. We were just at their corporate meetings they invited us to last week. They had franchises all across the country, and they moved their corporate headquarters here into the township. Assurance Software. And I think it's important to note that a lot of times you don't necessarily see those changes in the Park Point Business Center, right? Because you don't see a for sale sign. You don't necessarily see a retail business opening. But people investing there make a tremendous difference to our township and the budget. Last month alone, we had 2 businesses sell in Park Point for $20 million. And you think, okay, somebody bought buildings. But 0.5% of that sales price goes right to the township. So $100,000 went right to the township budget to help pay for the services, the police, the roads, the plowing, the parks, because people are coming back here and investing in the township. Part of that is they're getting ahead of the 422 opening. Last year, we saw $60 million in businesses change hands, properties change hands there. So that was the tune of another $300,000 last year. Next slide, please. And as you see, we've had a ton of other notable businesses come. First Watch, Ebrew, True Hotel's about to open, the Urban Hound, Brandywine Coachworks is about to open in the Park Point Shopping Center. Two Amigos, great burritos if you're a burrito fan. I mean, they're fabulous. Arisuve, Karopolis in the old Wawa. Next slide, please. Valerio, who is out presenting, Bow Ties, Starbucks. We have 2 Starbucks coming. We have a second Starbucks coming to the Park Avenue Shopping Center. Valvoline across the street, Nooks and Crannies, a new Dunkin' Donuts is about to open here at the end of this month, next month, cleaning up a long, dilapidated corner. And you know, one of my favorites is the Ava's Ice Cream. I know we don't have their logo up there, but as you can probably see, my kids and I love going up there. But what does this really mean? What is the effect of all this? Next slide. Since 2017, we've had 111 new businesses open up here in the township. That's almost 1,100 new jobs, and that's growing. Park Point in 2015 was only 63% occupied. Today, it's 93% occupied, and the values of those buildings are going up. So those seeds we planted in 2014 and 2015 that we cultivated in 2016 and 2017, you see them sprouting here in 2019 and will sprout in 2020. So what's the bottom line? What does that really mean to the resident? Well, in 2012, our revenues from sources other than property taxes, and property taxes are only 14% of our budget, but our revenues from people working here, real estate transfer fees, inspections, permits, it was $7,464,000. Last year, it was $9,661,000. That's an increase of $2.2 million in non-property tax money, revenue, that goes right back to providing services to the residents. Those are the seeds that have been planted and sprouted over the last 4.5, 5 years, the progress that's been made that we hope to see continue. And now Supervisor Ekman will tell you about some of the properties that we're still working on here. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome. First, I'll do a sound check because there's always an issue with the volume of my voice and the speakers. So is everybody okay to hear me here? Excellent. Thank you. That gives me great relief. This is extremely exciting to see this many residents here interested in hearing what's going on in our beloved township. Many of us are lifelong residents, and it is really inspiring to see this type of interest. So let's talk about the priority properties that the supervisors have really been focusing on in the past several years. Okay, first up, and these are some of the successes that we've been having. The first up would be 3200 Ridge Pike. We all know this as the former Eagleville Gennardi's property. This property was actually vacant for 7 years. Last November, 2018, we opened the Ollie's discount bargain outlet in that shopping center, and we were thrilled to do that. And they now have 35 employees in that store. Moving on down to Audubon, there was another Gennardi's, the Audubon Gennardi's, 2850 Audubon Village Drive. This, of course, was the Audubon Gennardi's since 1965, I believe. They were in the upper part of the shopping center, and in '95 moved to the lower part where they built the new building. But unfortunately, we're not able to survive, and we did see them close. And for a short stint, we had a Keller's shopping center in there. But really, for the past 3 years, that space has been vacant. And we've been diligently working to find a new supermarket, if possible, to take over that space. And so we were thrilled when we started having discussions with the Redners that they were interested in it. And one of the caveats was that they needed to have small gas pumps out in the shopping center. And so our zoning officer, Mike Merzinski, looked at the existing zoning, and we were able to make it work because there actually used to be a gas station there in that shopping center, if anybody remembers that. So we were able to give them that. And that's really what sealed the deal for Redners to be able to come into the township. Westover Properties, the new owner, of course, as Patrick mentioned, invested millions into that, making the facade, look like a brand new shopping center, new paving, new landscaping. They're not complete yet. They still have, I guess, basically another phase that they'd like to work on. But securing the Redners was really key to help them continue with the improvements. So we're thrilled. October 23rd will be their grand opening, and I hope to see you all there. It certainly will be a great occasion. And they are hiring too as well, so if anybody's looking for employment, Redners is hiring, and we are told that the Collegeville Redners, the warehouse market, will be staying open. So this is a different type of Redners. They're calling it a market store, so it's not quite the warehouse store. Another property where we've had great success and recently opened, 2601 Ridge Pike. This, of course, was the former location of the Norristown Ford site and the Sunoco gas station, which was on the corner. Another site that had been vacant for a very long time, close to 12 years. And last week, we had the grand opening of the Lidl supermarket. Certainly hope that the residents have been able to get in there and to see what they have to offer to the township. Again, considerable investment from outside businesses. Large corporations are spending their money here in Lower Providence to build their new facilities and improve our intersections too with traffic improvements. So we're thrilled to see that. Very, very close to this site, across the street, 2600 Ridge Pike. That was, I believe it was a mobile gas station for quite a while. And again, another one that had been vacant. And this corner is definitely one of the gateways to the township from West Norton. And so we really had been trying hard to find new tenants for this spot. So the Dunkin' Donuts will be locating there. They actually got township approval way back in 2016, but had been taking their time with their building permits. But now you see the the gas station facility has been demolished, and they have framing for their new structure. So we're thrilled to see that happening. Quite a transformation for that corner. Down back into Audubon, a very infamous property, 2797 Egypt Road, Bud's Bar. This is certainly probably, I would say, number one on my list of buildings that need to find a new tenant and needs a lot of love. We have put quite a lot of effort into discussing this property with anybody that'll listen, really. Certainly, the real estate brokers that come in and ask us questions about it, we're very willing to sit down and explain the current zoning to them, what can be done, what can't be done, what some of the issues are with the property. Basically, it's a very difficult site. Not many businesses will fit on that sort of triangular, odd-shaped site, and if the existing building is taken down, a new building would require quite a lot of considerable traffic improvements. That would be, PennDOT requirements. So it would be significant investments. So we discuss those things with interested parties, and we're still working on it. There has been some recent interest in the property, but no official plans at this point have been submitted. Certainly, gosh, if that happens, we'll be, yelling it from the rooftops, because that will be quite a significant accomplishment. For that building, the current board, really, we've looked at it. We'd love to see the existing building retained, if at all possible. We've heard that probably close to $1 million would need to be spent to, make it a usable building. I sure hope that there's somebody out there that has that type of funding, that they could do something like that. And we encourage development that repurposes our historic structures. The Collegeville Inn property, they were able to reuse that building that's been there for a very long time. We're trying to look for a repurpose for the Audubon School. May eventually be something that the township is able to reuse. We're working on that. And then another property is the Fatlands Mansion off of Paulings Road, which has been vacant for sale for quite a while. So, we're working on that as well. That property, Fatland Estate, is 14 acres. It has the 11,000 square foot mansion. The zoning for that property is residential, it's R1, and it has the other piece is R2. It's interesting that in 2014, when it first went up for sale, the list price was, I believe, just close to $9 million. At this point, we are being told that the price is now down to $2.7 million. This is a significant piece of property in the township, and of course a very important building, and so we'd love to see it preserved or reused. So if anybody's interested, I'm sure you could find a real estate investor. We'd love to talk to them. Also in Audubon, another building that has been long vacant, probably our longest standing vacant property in the township is 950 Rittenhouse Road. This warehouse was the former Commodore computer site. It's a 14-acre site. It's in the corporate center. The actual building itself, which is in quite disrepair, is 147,000 square feet, so it's quite large. It is for sale, and we did something different and unusual, trying to market the redevelopment of this property. A few years ago, we worked with the school district, and we implemented what is called a LERTA. And so that piece of property has the LERTA designation. LERTA stands for Local Economic Revitalization Tax Assistance Program. What it does is as a developer would come and purchase that building and invest money to improve the property taxes that you would pay on the improvements are incrementally added over a 10-year period. So, in year one, they would not be paying the full property taxes on those improvements right away. They still would pay the base property taxes that is currently on the property, but not the improvements until 10 years. So, sometimes that can help to gain attraction for these properties that, are long vacant, especially industrial properties. And so we're hoping that somebody will pay attention to that and, either buy the building and reuse it or do a tear down and, build something new. So as you can see, we're having considerable success with redevelopment of these long vacant properties, but definitely the work still continues. We hope to be able to report more progress next year. Certainly last year, a lot has happened in this time span. But honestly, these successes just don't happen overnight. We've been working very hard. This progress has been years in the making, and the first step really was to establish a township staff with consultants that had the same vision that the Board of Supervisors had. We have staff and consultants that are efficient, they're active, they call people back, they want to see improvements in this township, and they are working for all of us residents and businesses, and so we're thankful for that. So I believe this effort really has changed the perception of Lower Providence. And honestly, I believe, and I've heard this, that we're now known as a township that is open for business. We've found sort of the secret way to turn a suburban community around. And, we're going to continue that effort. And we're always open to questions. If residents ever want to ask, it's either township staff or supervisors, we'd love to hear from you. So thank you again for coming and for your time and your interest. Not so fast. I forgot I have a next slide. Of course, I was given a time limit in the beginning, and I doubled it already. Okay, so up on the screen in front of you is our current township open space plan. As you can see, the township, we're fortunate to have numerous recreational amenities. We have lands that include Valley Forge Park, Evansburg Park, and of course, county-owned property. It actually adds up to be about 350 acres of parkland. Collectively, this land accounts for almost 25% of the township's total open space land. So the board recognizes the importance of this green space and the value that it adds to our township. So last year, at my prodding, we began with a small group of members from the Planning Commission and the Park and Recreation Committee, and we got together to discuss the township's current open space parcels, our trails, and our sidewalk system. Basically, the objective was to find ways to better connect our open spaces with additional sidewalks, green space, and maybe even trails. So quickly, our group realized that the current park plan, which is up on the screen in front of you, was out of date. This plan is actually from 2005. So some things have changed in the township. We have acquired some properties, all different things have happened. And so it is time to begin to undergo an update of this Park and Recreation Open Space Plan. So Bill, if you want to switch to the next slide. And so the Park and Rec Plan basically is an analysis of existing open space conditions. We look at what parks we own, what trails we have, the community profile, the demographics, all that is compiled into this Park and Recreation Open Space Plan. The information forms what we call a needs assessment and is the basis for developing a master park plan and a recreation open space plan. It's basically, this document is the Bible and necessary when we apply for grant funding, whether it's through the state or the county. And so in order to update this park and recreation plan so that we can apply for these grants, earlier this year, we applied for a state DCNR grant in order to fund this update of the book. So we're still waiting to hear back whether we will be granted that award. We should know in November, hopefully, or before the end of the year, whether that we were successful in getting that. If all goes well, and we do receive that funding in early 2020, the first thing we will do will be to secure a consultant that will begin updating that park and recreation plan, and then it will, come up with suggestions and ideas and park projects that the township can then consider to undertake. And so this is a sort of a long, slow process, but it's the proper process to plan for the future so that we are spending our money wisely on projects that will be well used in the township. So, and now that is definitely all I had, so thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. I have a minute left for my presentation. Good evening. I'm Jason Sorgini. I'm very proud to be a supervisor. For those of you who have come out to any of our past open houses or attended any of our board meetings, you might know that two of the areas I'm most passionate about discussing are infrastructure and emergency services. Infrastructure and emergency services are two areas that we don't necessarily, or at least governments in the past didn't always talk about, and then you find out when you need them that they either aren't there or that we didn't do enough to make sure that we supported them to be there when you needed them. So I can tell you that this board is absolutely committed to infrastructure and emergency services and supporting those areas. We do two things. Number one, our goal is to keep the residents of Lower Providence safe. But then our other goal is to make sure that we know you pay a lot in taxes, and so much of your tax money leaves Lower Providence Township. It goes off to Harrisburg for your state tax or Norristown for your county tax. Our goal is to get that money back and make sure that it's working for the residents of Lower Providence Township. And I know Colleen mentioned that, but in the area of infrastructure, transportation grants, pedestrian improvement grants, we've been able to bring in millions of dollars at this point to Lower Providence Township. So a couple different areas to talk about. One of the, our foci has been on creating connectivity in the township. And we've talked about Park Point and the fill rate of our businesses in Park Point and the fact that we've had those businesses exchange hands. And when that happens, that brings in new tax revenue into Lower Providence Township. Well, right next door is also retail space, and there's hotels and other areas that those new employees need to get to, but there weren't any sidewalks to get there. So we were able to secure two grants from the county, one for $100,000 and another one for $65,445 to build sidewalks in the business park and connect those areas to the retail and shopping areas and hotel areas that are adjacent nearby. In the realm of transportation, there have been multiple projects that have been completed already in 2019. Trooper Road and Ridge Pike. Lidl has been mentioned multiple times, but one of the most significant things to come out of Lidl with regard to roads is the opportunity to now have a fully signalized intersection with a left turn lane, a left turn arrow if you are headed eastbound on Ridge Pike and making a left onto Trooper Road, and an actual right turn lane if you're coming on Trooper Road and making a right onto Ridge Pike. The degree to which that keeps our residents safe is just astronomical. It has been a long time coming, and it's something that can only happen through traffic impact fees and the development that we've been able to focus on bringing here to Lower Providence. So that's something we're exceptionally proud of and something I'm very happy to be utilizing now. I know it was made for a difficult summer, but the Eagleville Road Bridge has been replaced. That's a partnership with PennDOT, and we're very happy that they were able to do that in such a short period of time. And another area that we're very happy about is our paving projects. Lower Providence brings in a significant amount of revenue in liquid fuels taxes, and we turn that right around and make sure that we have a dedicated program for paving the almost 100 miles of public roads here in Lower Providence Township. So this year we paved 3.21 miles. We've paved 12 miles over the past 5 years. That doesn't sound like a lot, but I've been on the board for 8 years, and when I came onto the board, there were a significant number of roads that had not been paved since before I was born. So in a short period of time, we've been really able to make sure that a dedicated paving program was part of what we are advocating for. Next slide, please. Continuing with transportation improvements, safety is absolutely our focus. And you've heard me talk about this before. You've heard the board probably talk about this before. But one of the primary intersections that we are working to improve is Eagleville Road, Park Avenue, and Crawford Road. And this is the third year that I've come up here and talked to you about that. And there's no shovel in the ground yet, and that's incredibly frustrating. But at the same time, we've come a very long way in a short period of time. Through public-private partnerships, we have actually raised $5.3 million towards improving that intersection. $3 million of that came from multimodal grants from PennDOT and from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Many of you on your way in had an opportunity to stop at the McMahon Traffic Engineer booth that was outside. There's a great deal of information that they have on that project. We're very excited about it. We are nearing the end of preliminary engineering, and we are moving towards our PennDOT approvals with the hope that we will enter the final engineering phase in October and begin construction in the next couple of years. I know it's frustrating to wait, but it's going to be worth it in the end. We are about $5 million short of our funding goal at this point, but that doesn't mean that we haven't started the process. It's somewhat convoluted when you deal with the state. You actually have to show that you are beginning the project and you are partially funded before they will fund the rest of your project. So it takes a gigantic leap of faith, and that's sometimes hard to do, but we've done that, begun that process, and in so doing, we've been able to generate $5.3 million so far. Our state representatives and senators are essential to helping to make sure that those projects are funded. So we're grateful to Representative Webster and Senator Muth, and we encourage you to reach out to them and to ask them to continue to support this project in Lower Providence Township. Ridge Pike and Trooper Road and Ridge Pike and Park Avenue. We've already talked about the turning lanes and the turning the arrow onto Trooper Road, but at the same time, we are also working towards securing funding to help signalize those intersections and coordinate them with West Narton. If you've been in that area lately, you know how bad that traffic becomes, especially during the rush hour. Trooper Road has been almost unbearable as of late. So working together with Lower Providence, we are working to make a difference there. And then another project that is exceptionally exciting that we've been talking about at the township involves the Ridge Pike and Germantown area, Germantown Pike intersection area. There have already been improvements there because of Providence Place, and we have a new traffic light there and some road improvements there. However, if you've been following, you know that over in Collegeville, they are in the process of going through a development with Royal Farms. Royal Farms is going to work to improve the 29 area that's directly across the creek that makes it difficult to come into Lower Providence and out of Lower Providence. That traffic impact fee, the fact that that company will be working there, has proved dividends for Lower Providence because money that PennDOT had earmarked for there is now shifting across the creek to us. And that money is going to be utilized to create a new through road that will take Germantown Pike across to Ridge Pike at a new, with a new road and a new intersection, so that instead of it coming to a point where Germantown and Ridge Pike do today, the new road will be slightly further up. The traffic study is already done for that. PennDOT is already committed to that project, and we are well on our way. So that's a very exciting improvement that will hopefully happen in the next couple of years, with the eventual goal, and you might have heard me say this before, of building the second bridge that is so desperately needed across the creek. So that is part of that process. The placement of the connector road between Germantown and Ridge Pike has been determined based on the best fit of where that bridge will eventually go. And hopefully, nothing happens fast in government, I apologize, but hopefully in the next 10 years, we will see another bridge across the creek. Next slide, please. The other area that I mentioned is emergency services. We are profoundly blessed in Lower Providence to have police, fire, and ambulance services that are second to none. In our police force, we have a new chief this year, Chief Michael Jackson, who was here this evening. I don't know if he's still here, but he was out he's in the back there. Hi, Chief. So we welcome Chief Jackson. And very happy to announce, and I may be the first one to publicly announce, our new lieutenant who's actually replacing Chief Jackson in that position, Bill Hopkins, who I'm not sure is here this evening, but he's here this evening, Bill Hopkins. He's out there too. We are committed in Lower Providence to supporting our police department. One of the areas that needs vast improvement is the police facility that is located on the lower level of the township facility. Supervisors Chairman McFarland will be discussing that in just a moment, but that's an area that we will be looking to improve for the police in the coming years. Our fire department is an all-volunteer fire department, and that's a remarkable thing in an age where we have seen such a decline in volunteer fire departments across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We are very fortunate here in Lower Providence. We've also recognized as a Board of Supervisors that part of continuing that fire department is making sure that the fire department is properly funded and that they have proper equipment. Over the last 2 years, the board has been working with the board of the fire department to listen to their needs, to acknowledge that we work cooperatively together. I think for too many years, the fire department did a wonderful job, and they did their thing, and the board did their thing, but it's really a cooperative effort. And it's been really remarkable working with Chief Sibley and all of his command staff, and very excited about where that partnership is moving in the future and making sure that they continue to be fully funded. And also recently, we've begun talking with our emergency medical services, with our ambulance services, recognizing that they are overtaxed as well. We have an increasingly larger senior citizen population in Lower Providence, and we also have an increasing need for ambulance services, and continuing to make sure that the ambulance service is properly funded and supported is also critical. So infrastructure and emergency services, two things that you don't necessarily always think about, but they're things that are absolutely critical to the well-being of this township, and also people wanting to live here and move here and be part of this community. And we're very grateful to our emergency services and to all of the improvements that we've been able to make in infrastructure. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to turn it back over to Chairman McFarland.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jason. Supervisor Knights was at the very last minute unable to attend, so I'm going to just cover the subject that he had been assigned and go over that with you very briefly. This is our focus now going forward. We've talked about a lot of the successes, a lot of the things that we've done, a lot of the things that are beginning to now develop and mature and become valuable resources to all of us that live here. We've got to keep looking further. And one of the things that we're looking at now is we have a township building that was built in 1979. In the lower level of that, as many of you already know, is our police department, and they are completely out of room in that township building. They need a new facility there. The current day needs of security and electronics and so forth are undoable in that space. So we have to look at that. We also know the library was built in 1996. It's a very active and viable library. We may need to look going forward, and when I say going forward, 5, 10 years, they may need to expand, and of course we always are looking to add to our parks and recreation space. So those are things that we need to begin to look at going forward. Next slide. Now, having said that, the township, as all townships do, has debt, like we all do, like mortgages, and we are scheduled to be debt-free in 2024. Don't have the exact number, but it's about $600,000 a year of of debt payments now that we make. So that would mean that that money would become available without any need for imposing any further taxes or anything else to reinvest in the township without adding to the burden of the taxpayer. Not that we've already set our minds to do that, but that's an option that's available. And so when we do that, we can consider new debt now for a remodel or a new township building, for a new police station, and perhaps possible fire station improvements. As Jason pointed out, we have a very large group of dedicated volunteer firemen who continually every year get less state aid, who are required every year to do more training for free in order to qualify as firemen. And still we have a very robust, healthy group of firemen. What we want to do as a Board of Supervisors on behalf of the township is make sure that those volunteers have the equipment and the fire trucks and the stations they need to operate and safely for all of us who need them. So we're going to take a hard look at that as we go forward and look at future spending to make sure that they get what is needed for them to be viable and to be able to respond to you the way that they do now without any financial constraints on their part. So next slide. This is just, we've already done a preliminary, more or less a artistic sketch, you will, of what might be done. And one thing that the consultants that we had showed this building, this is just an artist's conception. This is not our decision. It's not a building we're planning on, but just to show you we're thinking about. This building is one that they are suggesting that we put up on the township property near the sewer building adjacent to Ridge Pike. One of the big problems that the chief would tell you they have is that they have times when they need to get out of the police station and get somewhere in a hurry. And right now they have to go right through the parking lot to do it, and the library. So there are a lot of things that obviously they don't go at high speeds, but that slows down the response time. They would be much better off being able to come in directly from Ridge Pike, and a concept of this type, which provides them with the technical and security needs that they have, would be the kind of thing that we would begin to look at. Again, concept, not a decision. We'll do a lot more studying in a couple of years ahead to see what that might look like. But these are the things that we have begun to think about as we look at the next 5 years. Next slide, Bill. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over now to Township Manager Don Delamata, who's going to give you a brief update on our budget and some new faces in the management positions and some grant applications. And then I'm going to be back to wrap it up. So hang in there.
Thank you, Mr. McFarland. Each quarter, I provide an update to the Board of Supervisors at a public meeting as far as where we're at with the budget. This is kind of a recap of my last presentation, which was about a month ago. In general, revenues are doing well. They're stable, as you've heard tonight. We've been seeing some increases in our real estate transfer taxes, which is a benefit. We also saw a big hit in our earned income tax, one-time revenue source. We were lucky to have an individual who works in the township but lives in a community that does not have an earned income tax. He received a rather large bonus to the tune of $250,000 worth of earned income tax that he had to pay on it. That was able to stay here in Lower Providence Township because, as I said, the community where he lives does not impose that tax, so we were able to keep that tax. So that it's a one-time revenue source for this year, but it's nice to see, and we're able to use that then for some of these projects that we're talking about, some of this work we're talking about. As of August 31st, we're about 82% collection of our budget for earned income taxes. We're at 125% of our real estate transfer tax budget. Again, a lot of properties are selling, turning over in the business park. People are investing, and that's a good thing. That's a good sign for the township. And our real estate taxes, we're at 96% collection rate already. So that's a good sign as well for the township and our operations. Expenditures overall remain consistent with what we budgeted. So come the end of the year, we should see a positive result with our budget. That's all, obviously, depending on any significant events that we may experience. Last year, we had a major storm sewer pipe blowout on Pinetown Road that we had to repair. So, you know, it's important to have these revenues coming in like we're seeing, because you never know when those unfortunate events are going to happen that we have to address as a municipality. So, new faces in the operations, as mentioned earlier. We have a new police chief, Michael Jackson, a new lieutenant. Our former police chief, Stan Turtle, many of you may have known, was with the township for many years, retired. Had a great opportunity to move on. I was lucky to work with him for 2.5 years when I started, and I appreciate everything he did for me as the manager and supported me through those 2.5 years. So he'll be missed, but we do wish him well in his his moving on. So we also have a new fire marshal in the township. The former fire marshal, Charlie DiFrancesco, retired earlier this year, and Mike Rolfling was appointed the new fire marshal, so you may see him around. He's working more with the fire company and trying to start new programs, new fire marshal programs, and improve the safety of the community. Parks and Rec director, we have a new Parks and Recreation director. Our former director, Carl Lukens, resigned in April, and Jane Delaney was hired to take that position. So she's already implemented many new events for the township. You're going to see a little tweaking to some of our current events. We're always looking to try to improve and enhance what we provide to you, the residents here of the township. So any input that you have, any ideas, I'm sure she'd be welcome to listen to those, take those. She has a table out front, her and Karen. So feel free to catch up with them and talk to them about that. Some grant applications we've submitted in 2019. We're always looking for money to try to do these projects. Obviously, we don't want to keep coming to the taxpayers to pay for these projects. So we're always looking, where can we get this money from? And we'll apply for any and all grants that we can. Obviously, most grants, you need money to get those grants. You have to have money to pay your share. So that's where the budget comes in, to try to come up with our share to get the bigger pot of money that's out there. Dr. Sorgini mentioned the Monco 2040 grants for the sidewalk projects that are taking place. We applied for a Green Light Go grant that'll cover 80% of a $575,000 project to coordinate the 3 traffic signals along Egypt Road from Crawford to Surrey Lane. We're waiting to hear back from that. We're obviously applying for many grants to do the Eagleville Park Crawford intersection project. We need money. We're turning over every stone we can to try to find that money so that when final engineering is done, we can move right into construction. That's key for us, to have that money in place so that we can go right to construction and get that project done. It's vital for our community. As Ms. Ekman noted, that we applied for a DCNR grant for the open space plan, and that would pay for 50% of the cost to do that plan. So that's big money. It's a $100,000 cost estimated to update that plan. So to come up with $50,000 in grants would be key for us. We're also applying for a smaller grant. We look at the small grants too. We're applying for a PICO Green Region grant. It's a $10,000 grant, but we can use that to apply towards the our portion of the open space project, plan project. So, you know, as I said, anywhere we can find money, we're looking for it. We also received 2 DCED grants this year. One for $45,000 that we're using, and there's no match to these grants. We're using that to upgrade our municipal building security systems. You know, the cameras, the doors, the entrance doors, the card access system into our municipal building. So, you know, it's all of those systems are old and tired and need upgrade, and we were able to secure money to do that. We also received $50,000 from DCED, again, no match, to upgrade all the police emergency lighting on all the police vehicles. They're all old and outdated, and that would be money that would have to come directly out of our budget, that we were able to get $50,000 to pay for, so that we don't have to budget for that. So again, the theme is we're looking for money. You know, we realize money's tight, and we don't want to have to go back to the taxpayers to fund all of these. These are all important projects, so we're going to look everywhere we can first to come up with the funding before we have to resort to that. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Don, and thank you all for your patience. I was kind of putting this thing together, and I said, let's keep this down to 30 minutes. Well, we didn't quite do that, but I hope that you all found the information very interesting, and I hope that you all get a sense that we've been working for a number of years, and we're going to continue to work to try to make this the best township we can. There's another piece of information that I'll add, just to let you know, on the Audubon School that Colleen mentioned. As you all know, that school's been closed, and it's I don't want to say historic building in the sense that it has a state identification that way, but it's a heritage building at the very least, and it has a great deal of both emotional value to residents who went there, as well as practical value in terms of its location and its space. So Supervisor Duffy and I went to the school board meeting in late June, and at that public meeting we presented to them, to that board, a vision of what we saw as a future use for the township that could be beneficial to everyone in the district. And that basically described, I mean, you can look at it on YouTube, but it described what we call a community center that would allow that building to then be used for additional parks and rec and camp programs, which would probably add another 130 or 150 children to the camp process that sells out every year in a day. It would have opportunities for us to start programs for seniors, to offer space for the Boy Scouts and the Rotary Club and other community organizations to hold events. So there's a great deal that could be done along with the value of keeping that building, which, and you read about this on Facebook, and I'm not going to go into all that. That property is zoned for one of two things: residential or municipal use, municipal being township or school. There are no other options. There is no Ramada Inn going in there. There's not going to be a 7-Eleven. What we have then, from that meeting with the school board, we have met with the president of the school board, Kim Larsenese, the president of the property committee, Ralph Navarrete, the superintendent of the school board, Dr. Zerby, myself, Supervisor Duffy, and Township Manager Delamato. We've met with them about 4 times so far this summer. We are making what we think is great progress to come to an understanding that would allow us to take that building. And we're not sure yet, and it's a little premature, but we do want you to know that we are working very hard, and we are hopeful and optimistic that without too much more time going by, we'll be able to announce that we have provided a community center for Lower Providence that's also available to all of Worcester residents as well. That is a school district building, so obviously we would want all of the district residents to be able to utilize it. So I just wanted to pass that along because we're working very hard on that, and we're hoping to have some good news on that maybe in the next month or 2, perhaps. Other quick things that we didn't mention and won't go into, but stormwater management is becoming a very serious and very expensive issue for every township. We have not begun to accrue significant money for it. Other towns around us have gone and accrued as much as $500,000 against what they expect the state to make them do. One of the things we're dealing with in that, as part of that, is that we are part of the group of towns through which the Skippack Creek flows. And any of you that pass through there, you see that Skippack Creek is pretty brown when it flows. The state would like that to be not brown. But we're at the bottom of that barrel, and there's not a lot we can do about what's coming down to us. So we're working, and a township engineer is working in a consortium with these other towns to be able to meet those, but there is significant cost involved with all of our towns, all of the towns involved, in order to make that happen. And finally, and then I'll be done, with all of this that we've been working on and we're going to continue to do, we're now beginning to think about what we can do to help improve some options for residential use for our residents and perhaps for new residents. And by that, I don't mean attracting a lot more new residents. The township is basically built out. Yes, a 6 or 10 unit development can go in here or there, but there is no room for 200 more houses. And the fact of it, that you may have heard, but it's true, is that 70% of the taxpayers do not have children in the schools. Now that, has a lot of interesting facets to it, but one of the main ones is that we have people that are getting older that are in their homes, their children are long gone, and there's 2 people in a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house. That house could be very well utilized for a young family, but the people that live in it don't want to move out of town and don't have any real options to consider if they did. So we're just beginning to discuss that, and I bring it up because I would certainly welcome input and comments on that. We'd like to begin to look at ways that we can provide some options for senior citizens and people that don't have children in school anymore to maybe downsize to a different type of property that they're more comfortable with, then putting that house that they live in for sale, then bringing in new young families, which this township desperately needs. And it won't be coming from new construction because we're not going to get a significant amount of that. Again, you probably know it, but the school population has been declining for 10 years in a row. And that's part of the reason why. So we need to do something to help our residents get better options and then to make a choice on their own to move to something else, making their homes become more available. Just a thought, very early, the board has not had any formal discussions about this, but I wanted to mention it because I'd like all of you to think about that. And, email us, send us a text message, whatever you can find it on the website. But we'd like to find some very good solutions that are affordable for people who live in the township to get into something more comfortable without having to leave the township to do so. So that wraps it up. Thank you again very much, and we appreciate your patience. We could probably take a few questions if you have any. Otherwise, we're all going to stay in the area for a little bit, and we'll answer them individually. Yes, sir.
One question from a remark you made. There was some recent interest in Old Bugs Tavern. Can you elaborate on that?
So there's been lots of things that come in, right? There was an automotive repair business came in, and they were doing sketches, and then they realized they didn't have enough space to do what they needed for egress and ingress and PennDOT's approval. So that was one that in the past year that was really interested. We thought we were moving somewhere. Of course, that included removing the current building. But they couldn't acquire any adjacent space next door, basically because it was too expensive. And so they have moved on. So lots of these things come in, they talk to us, we get excited, and then things fall apart. So there is another one that's just was a conversation, and we're anxiously awaiting, a little more details before we start to say that. Sometimes if we give out information too early, we have realized that you get a false sense of hope, and it falls apart very quickly. And so it sort of can hurt deals too. So I wouldn't feel comfortable saying anything more because it was just a conversation at this point. So, but.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. Could you speak up just a bit, please?
Yes, it rained July 12th and flooded the Providence Place property as well as several others south of that. Is there been any discussion on how to fix or make sure that it doesn't happen on such a low amount of rain again?
I don't recall. I thought there was a fairly substantial amount of rain associated with that.
5 inches.
That's a pretty substantial amount of rain. And that's all coming from upstream, which is really the issue. As you know, that the wall that was put up at the Providence Place was in order to provide a barrier against the 100-year flood mark to allow that building to be reused. And so this did not begin to get close to that.
They did have flooding issues July 12th, amongst other properties out there. And I was just wondering if there was any discussion on whether.
Well, our township engineer, Tim Woodrow, would be much more familiar with the details, and he's right out at the, in the lobby, so you might want to bring that up with him. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes?
Just a comment. You talked about places for people like me who's 74 years old and in a 4-bedroom house with my wife. Up in Lattice Lane, off the level road, there's a bunch of nice houses there. They're 2,500 square feet or 3,000 square feet. Who in the heck is building one-story retirement homes in the 2,000 square foot range? I see the Sunday paper ads for Toll Brothers, they're building $500,000 things. I'm not $500,000 to spend on a house.
No, I wasn't thinking about Toll Brothers when I was talking. And I can tell you that, I mean, I just know anecdotally that,
Houses in like, 2,000 square feet or less.
well, I can tell you that, Lattice Lane, a lot of those sales never even go on the market, and many of them that do don't go on for very long. So that's a very popular option as a downsize option. Well, we'll let, when we talk to developers and try to encourage them, we'll tell them, something less than that maybe. Most of us are, and that was my point, and I wasn't pointing at anything because I'm doing that as well. We need to provide options, and until we do, we can't expect to see those home sales, resales go up. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Are they still planning to develop the area next to SC Park? And if so, are they gonna have stoplights on either end of Church Road?
At the last supervisors meeting, that plan was denied. Now, they have the right to appeal, and they may or may not do so. I don't know. But at this moment, there is not a plan in place. Other questions? Yes?
For the property that is across the street from Audubon School,
Yes.
where the golf course and the pool is currently located, it's my understanding that the lease on that property is going to be up in about 4 or 5 years. Is that true?
No.
No, that's not true.
I don't remember the exact date. I think it's close to 2040.
2040.
Yeah, it's a long-term lease. What will be up in 3 or 4 years is the debt to buy it. So once we have paid off the debt that I mentioned in an earlier slide, the lease payment that we're getting there will not go toward debt anymore. It will come toward the township for other uses.
So that $100,000 lease payment will be able to go to other uses.
The current debt payment, the current lease payment is now going toward debt to pay that property off. In about 4 years, that will be paid off, so that lease payment from that forward would then become available cash for something else. And that lease has been in place for, I think it was a 40-year lease or something. I don't have the details, but it's a long-term lease. Okay, so it's going to be there for a while. But it is open space in the sense that it's never going to be built on. The township owns it.
I'd like to ask about that. So we have a long-term lease. The newspaper articles that I've seen shows that lease being up in 4 or 5 years. It is a community space. It is owned and paid for by the taxpayers of Lower Providence. We pay about $400,000, and they've gone down with the recent rebudgeting. So I am surprised, having been in the office for 5 years, you don't know the terms of that lease. Or maybe Colleen, being the oldest serving in the position, might know the terms of that lease. But that is a township property and would be a viable community center. The point of that lease for 25 years was to reimburse Shenandoah or the Nielsen family for putting that investment into it. So, and I know when the YMCA was looking at it, they had managed to get us out of that lease as part of that agreement, but then the agreement fell down because one of the board members voted against it. So
Do you have a question?
I'm not sure the answer.
Do you have a question for us?
What is the long-term plan for the golf course that Shenandoah is leasing from us for $100,000? We pay $400,000. Is there a plan to get out of that lease and use it as a community center, which is what it was originally purchased for back in the 90s?
No, there is no plan to get out of the lease and convert it to a community center at this point. We're looking across the street at a community center.
So why would we acquire a new property when we own and will have a property paid off in 4 years?
Because we have leased it, not we, the township has leased it, what was it, 10, 12 years ago? 2007. And why, we're not going to spend the money to go into a legal discourse over whether or not we can break the lease, and we don't have any further need for it right now, nor do we have the money or the desire to construct new buildings for a community center when we have a perfectly good heritage building across the street that we would prefer.
I think the new one in Shenandoah would be the good one. But, all right, you answered my question.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate you coming out.